Hi, this is Jim's Little Boat. I'm Jim. Did you ever have a good idea that upon further reflection you realized was probably not a good idea? That's how this project started out. I wanted to move my depth sounder, and my first idea was that I would build a little box to house it. It would hold some beer and binoculars. And I built a prototype, and 3 days later I woke up at 3 in the morning. That was a stupid idea. So I'll show you the prototype that I started with, and then we'll break for just a second and I'll come back. Right now my depth sounder's down here just at the cabin entrance, and that's handy. All the wires fit nicely, and that's where a previous owner had it. That's why I had to install that plate. But I'm constantly asking people to move their feet so I can look at it. I'd like to move that depth sounder readout. My original idea was to put it up here on the bulkhead next to the compass, but as somebody rightly pointed out, having electrical wires next to your compass is kind of a lousy idea. So my new idea is to get rid of the box I made for binoculars. I never really liked the design anyway. It's made out of Starboard and it's kind of chunky and it doesn't really fit the boat. And make something else that would go on this bulkhead that would be longer, that could house the depth sounder so I'd have a nice visual display when I look up, and hold a pair of binoculars or 2 or 3 beers. So I think I'll go make a mock-up out of cardboard and see how that would look. Well, I don't know. I think that might be perfect. Could maybe go an inch shorter. Leaves me room to get the halyards into the sheet bag. Yeah, I think we'll try that. All it's going to cost me is a piece of Starboard and some time. Having built the prototype and taken a day or two off, I realized that that was kind of a lousy design. Mounting the depth sounder readout on the outside of the cabin was just going to create all kinds of problems. That housing isn't waterproof. So back to the basics. Let's mount the meter on the bulkhead. But if we do that, what do we do with all those ugly wires? So a considerable part of this video is about building a panel to go over the starboard bulkhead to hide all the wires. And of course, there's some wiring stuff too. I made this template, so I'm going to tape it to the bulkhead and then use a little block of wood to spile off the outline of the bulkhead so I can cut the new future bulkhead. We'll see. I think it'll work. Well, as you can see, I have the cardboard taped in place. I'm going to take a block of wood and do what's called spiling to capture the shape. This kind of gives you the idea. This block of wood goes against the outside, and we use that to make a mark on the inside. It's called spiling. When I do that all the way around, I will have captured the outside measurements, and we can go recreate the shape in the shop. Now we recreate the shape by taking the spiling block and going back to the bigger pattern and draw that whole line in, and we can recapture the shape. Well, there it is, the cutout bulkhead. Let's go see if it actually fits. Actually, that was pretty close. We need to take a little off the top left corner and cut back a little on the right side, and that will be good enough because this isn't actually the template for the shelf. This is just to show us the maximum area available on the bulkhead to attach a shelf or a wall or whatever we're going to do. Well, it's a dark, dreary day here in Washington, kind of normal for January. I went in the boat. That thing fits perfectly, so now we know exactly what the outside area is we have to work with as we design this false wall to hold all the wires. The first thing I did was to make a copy of the original template on this nasty old cardboard. That's just insurance in case I screw up the nice clean template and I have to start over. Next thing we're going to do is cut a 1-inch margin all the way around and see how that fits. I think 1 inch. I might want to take off more, but let's just start with 1 inch and see what happens. I've had the night to think about it, and upon further reflection, I've decided to leave the bottom. Don't take 1 inch off that. Make it flush with the bottom. And all the way around the margin, I'm only going to take off 1/2 inch. The notion is that I want the wires to come down through there and disappear around through some nice neat conduit under the bulkhead and go down into the bilge area. This is how I think this thing goes together. We have the panel that goes over the bulkhead. Behind it will be these three battens to create some space so the wires can drop down. So those will go behind. I've marked those off. On the front side of the panel you'll see inside the cabin, there's a light. That cylinder on the top right hand, that's going to be the cover for the back end of the depth sounder. And then I guess I'm going to have to custom make a magazine rack that will hold the small charts I use when I'm out there on the water. Well, I think I'm about ready to go get the Starboard and cut out that panel. I made this little chart holder box magazine rack. That's just standard woodworking techniques. 2 scrap pieces of mahogany, piece of Starboard on the bottom, piece of acrylic on the front. I am going to have to give up the charging port because there's not enough room behind the panel to accommodate them. They're all too deep. But I think that's what we'll go with, so time to get the Starboard and start cutting. So I laid the panel on the table saw. It's just too big to cut safely. I can't use the panel cutting jig. Too dangerous to freehand it, plus I might wreck the panel besides cutting off my thumb. So I guess my choices are I could use a circular saw, I could use a jigsaw, or I could use the bandsaw. But whatever I'll do, I'll have to dress the edges up with a plane or the jointer over there. So given that I have all these tools, I'll probably go ahead and use the bandsaw. If I didn't have all these fancy tools, I'd probably go ahead and use a jigsaw and then hand plane the edge. Well, we'll see. Safety first. I think we're ready to make the first cut. The plastic is screwed down to a piece of wood. Clamps are in place. Everything's secure. Let's give it a shot. So here's kind of an update of what we've been doing. First, I wanted to verify that it really was a 2-inch hole through the bulkhead. The bulkhead turns out to be 3/4 of an inch thick, just like this plywood, for those of you that might want to do that. And over here, let's not swoosh it too hard, I've been cutting the original template so I would know exactly where to locate the battens, and then I've been drilling the battens so I can drive screws and screw them into the bulkhead. So that's kind of what's up at this point. It's been a few days. I've been working on replacing the coax inside the mast. All right, battens are in place and screwed to the bulkhead. Holes squared away for the depth sounder gauge. I think we're good. Well, as you can see, I have stuff scattered just everywhere. I'm working on the electrical components and the wires that will go behind the panel. The light, and I cut the wires that came with it, and I've added bayonet connectors. The idea is that if I need to replace the light, I can just reach through, pull those out, disconnect the light, and put a new one in. As far as the depth sounder itself is going, a little Hawkeye, I had to redo the electrical wires and put on these, splice on some more wire. The wires will be behind the panel, and the fuse was right there. I don't want the fuse there because I would have to take the panel off to change it. So I've added a bunch of electrical wire there. And I've done my usual thing. I've used a connector and then a little shrinky dink over the top of it. So I continue to work on this. As you can see, we're out in the boat and we've tidied up all the wiring as best we're able. At least it won't get snagged up in the keel winch. Brought it up here to the bulkhead next to the battens. And this is the whole mess that I was trying to avoid. I checked the depth sounder. I checked the new cabin light. All that seems to work quite well, but I just didn't want all these wires showing. So now, having done all this, we can go ahead and fasten the panel after I drill some screw holes. Alrighty, panel's installed, lights installed, seems to work just fine. Little chart holders installed, wires are all hidden nicely as we planned. There's a few little wires right there that go in a black tube down behind the winch panel. Everything's tidied up there. Everything works. I'm calling that a check mark.